I'm attorney Michael Tyler, bringing you guests and information to help you get legal. Hello, and welcome to another installment of Get Legal. I am your host, attorney Michael Tyler. We have two wonderful guests lined up for you today, but before we get into that, I would like to discuss some information with you, as I normally do, with respect to some things that I may see or encounter within my practice. The main thing I'm going to talk about today is what happens in instances where a client calls me or sends me an email message and states that they are ready to settle their case or their claim. Now, I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of the client is still currently in the process of treating for their injuries. When that happens and they have not been released by the doctor, then I make an appointment with the client for the client to come in and sit down with me so we can discuss their case or their claim and where their current treatment status is. At that point in time, in the meeting, I will inquire with the client, how do they physically feel? If the client tells me that the area of injury that they experienced because of the accident is still giving them some pain or is still bothering them, then I will always urge that client to go back to the doctor so that we can get some type of final determination as to whether or not the pain symptoms that are being experienced, as well as the injury, is it a situation where it will just linger for a little bit longer and then subside, or if it's a situation where some type of more serious or, shall I say, more in-depth treatment may be needed. And this is an example I'm going to give you. Actually, I'm going to give you two examples as to why this is important. Because in some instances, I've been told some attorneys may not approach it like I do, but I'm more comfortable with approaching it my way, as I feel it helps to protect me moving forward, but it also ensures that the client knows what their treatment situation is, what their injury situation is, to close out a claim. The first example is this. Male client came to me and stated, Michael, I want to go ahead and settle. We sat down and met. I asked him how his injury situation was doing. He had a shoulder injury. He stated that he went to the doctor recently at that time, and the doctor told him that he is still having issues with his shoulder as he had still some limited ranges of motion within his shoulder. However, the client still wanted to settle the claim. I told the client I was not comfortable with settling the claim at that particular time, and that I would be more comfortable only after we received an MRI on his shoulder. So I set everything up with his doctor. We sent him for the MRI, and lo and behold, the results came back to the point where he actually had to have surgical intervention. Had we just moved forward in the way that he wanted to, I can almost guarantee you that his shoulder would have gotten worse, because injuries, especially if they're serious injuries, do not get better over time. They get worse. And so he would have been in a situation where we would have settled the claim, not been able to consider that particular injury. He would have then needed post-settlement surgery of some type, and then it would have been an issue of how does he pay for that, because we would not have been able to go back to the insurance company to get compensation for what we should have gotten the first time since we settled. Needless to say, he was very appreciative that I talked him out of settling at that time. He received his surgery, his shoulder's repaired, he's doing much better. The second example is a female client who recently came to me and stated, Michael, I'm ready to settle my claim. She had a severe back injury. I looked at her imaging. Her back injury was pretty severe. She was seeing an orthopedic surgeon. She had received an epidural steroid injection into the injured spot. However, she felt that some of the issues, some of the symptoms have lessened, so therefore things probably are going to get better, so I'm ready to go ahead and settle. I told her, think about it, because with the condition that I was in, that situation definitely was not going to get better. It was absolutely going to get worse. And when I tell you worse, to the point of she may not be able to walk again if she didn't receive the full extent of the treatment that was being made available to her. So I told her, look, think about it, go home, think about it, talk it over with your family before you make that decision, because I would prefer that we get you back into treatment so that we can get it worked up to the point where we know whether or not you'll need surgery, and then we can make an informed decision on settlement. She took some time, she thought about it, and a couple of days later she contacted me and said, Michael, I'm glad you made me think about it, because after we met, about a day or so later, my back pain got so worse I was not able to go to work and I had to go to the doctor. Had we done what the client wanted us to do, then she would not have been in a good position, and she, of course, would have been mad at me for not doing my job. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you need money, or you're just tired of the hassle of having to continue to go to the doctor to get treatment, and it's just protracting out and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, just hang in there, stick with it, because your quality of life is more important than whatever dollars that you will get from the insurance company. And guarantee you me, you will spend those dollars faster than your injuries will be healed. So take time, make sure you have a competent attorney who's willing to listen to you, but more importantly, make sure you have someone working for you who will stand up, talk to you, explain things to you the way that they need to be explained, and help to put you in a good position to where you get the medical treatment necessary, you get healed, and then we get your case closed out with a nice settlement. So if you run into a situation where you feel like you're not being taken care of, get legal, call me. But enough of that. Now I want to go ahead and transition over into my wonderful guest today. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well,
great.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm sitting here with Angelon and Lewis Nelson, and they run the Mustard Seed Financial Services. Can you just explain a little bit about the name Mustard Seed Financial Services? Where'd that come from?
Sure. I would have to say we came up with the name based on our principles of the company.
Okay.
Firstly, we'll say that the company, it is our company. It's not a multi-level marketing company.
Okay.
So it's based off our principle, which is basically our faith.
Okay.
Most people hear the mustard seed, they think of the story in the Bible when Jesus talked about having the faith of a mustard seed. And faith for us, we use as an acronym, the F in faith being fairness, which we will treat all our clients fairly, as well as make sure that their reports, their credit reports, are fair with reports on them by the law, as well as the A in faith being accuracy. There's a law that says that each report has to be accurate as well as fair, and so we abide by that. And the I in faith would be our integrity. We place our name on this company, and so we make sure that all our clients, we handle them with integrity. The T in faith, of course, is truthfulness. We'll be truthful with them and allow them and let them know, the things that they need to do to repair their credit, or what they need to do to fix it. And the H in faith would be our honesty. We're honest with each client, because some clients, we may not be able to help them. We'll let them know what we can do for them, or as well as educate them on what they can do for themselves.
Okay. In that discussion, you mentioned credit repair. I'm going to assume that your main line of business is credit repair.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And with that, if you can explain, because I think sometimes people will hear the phrase credit repair and might look at it ambiguously.
Yeah.
What exactly is credit repair?
Okay, so what credit repair is anything in your credit report that's inaccurately reporting. So if it's unverifiable, if it's outdated, you have the right to be able to dispute those things. Okay, so there's the Fair Credit Reporting Act that says that if there's anything in your credit report that's not reporting 100% accurate, fair, and true, you have the right to dispute those things. And so basically, credit repair is just being able to go through your credit report, dissect those things, and see where the inaccuracies lie, and going ahead and getting with the credit bureaus or the creditors to get those things disputed or removed from your credit report if they cannot be verified.
Okay. And you primarily function here in Louisiana?
Yes.
Yes.
And with that, is there a requirement that you have to either be licensed through a state agency or something of that nature?
Yes, with the state of Louisiana, we have to have a bond for credit repair. And so we register with the Secretary of State, and we also had to get a bond and present that to the Secretary of State so they can file it. And just basically just having your license.
Okay. Now, I know in my field, sometimes when I sit down with a client, I have to dispel certain misconceptions. Are there misconceptions within your field that you find that you almost routinely have to dispel?
Absolutely. One of the main misconceptions with credit repair is people think that it's an overnight fix, and it's not. Let's be honest, it didn't happen overnight. It's not going to take over, it's not going to be overnight to get it repaired.
Correct.
We have to be realistic.
Absolutely.
And just another thing, people think, oh, I got these collections on here, I'm going to go ahead and just pay them all out, and my credit's going to be good. And actually what that does is it actually lowers your credit score because now it's just reporting as a paid collection. So
Gotcha.
people need to understand if anything's on your report that shouldn't be there, then you have the right to dispute those things and just get them removed completely, because just paying it out or not getting with the creditor that they could actually remove those things, it's going to still be there to haunt you.
Okay. Now, your office is located where?
Okay, so we're in Baton Rouge, but 95% of what we do is virtually.
Okay.
So online, over the phone is how we handle our clients.
Okay. We're going to have much more information coming back to you when we revisit with the Nelsons after this break. Welcome back. Again, I'm joined by the Nelsons of Mustard Seed Financial Services, and we're talking about credit repair. With that, I want to ask you about the credit score, because ultimately when a lot of people think about credit, the main thing they think about is credit score.
Yes.
What things, I guess, good question is, what things are utilized to make up a credit score?
Okay. So with your FICO score, there's 5 different components of a FICO score. The first one being payment history. And so the payment history makes up 35% of your FICO score. And so your FICO score ranges from a 300 to 850. So you have 550 points roughly to play with. Well, your payment history makes up 165 of those points. So if you're showing late payments, those are the type of things that weigh heavily, because it's showing a lender if they can actually trust you. So the next thing would be your credit use, credit utilization. So how much credit is extended to you versus how much you're actually using. So lenders don't want to see that you're barely making it and you're just paying enough to get by. You're struggling, and that's what it looks like. So credit use is very important. The next thing would be your credit history. So it's your credit age. A lot of times people hear not to close up a credit card or anything like that because it affects the credit age. For instance, say you have 2 old cards, maybe 20 years of history on them, Sears cards, you barely use them, okay? And so you decide, you know what, I'm gonna go get a couple of Visa cards or whatever, and you go get some new cards, a gas card, a Visa card, or whatever. Well, you have 2 cards with 20 years of history, so that means your average history is 20 years, right? But you go out and you get 2 new cards with fresh out of the gates, and so now your history has gone from 20 years to 10 years because you have to divide that amongst those 4 cards now.
Gotcha.
And so your history is drastically, and so that counts for a major part of your credit score as well. That counts for 15%. And then the 10% of your credit score will be your credit mix. So what types of credit you have. Lenders want to see that you're flexible. They want to see how responsible you are with different forms of credit. So it could be revolving, it could be installment loan, your student loans, real estate, those type of things. And then credit, help me out, inquiries. So new credit.
Well,
That accounts for 10% of your score as well. So inquiries, there's hard inquiries and there's soft inquiries. So a hard inquiry is, when you go out and you're filling out an application for stuff, you're applying for credit.
Right.
A lot of people panic because, say, they want to get a new car or something like that, and they go to a dealership and they say, we'll run it with one of our lenders, and it ends up they have 40 lenders.
Right.
And they run that run that credit report that many times. Well, people panic when they see that. But to kind of alleviate that, what FICO has is a 14-day window. And so if you're doing some kind of like-for-like, trying to get a home or a car or something like that, a student loan, well, they look at that as one inquiry.
Oh,
So it
gotcha.
does not count.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And now when you were mentioning before, of course, we were talking about the credit score itself.
Mm-hmm.
But you stated that if you go to a lender, they'll look and see if you have late payments, so on and so forth. I'm going to assume they're looking at something that the score and all of your history is contained in, sort of like a credit report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And with that, let's say I'm John Q. Citizen. For that credit report, is there a way that I can access my credit report without having to go through a service, pay money, anything
Yes.
of that nature?
Yes. You are entitled to your credit report. You can go and pull your own credit report at least once a year with annualcreditreport.com.
Right.
You can go and pull your free credit report. You can look at it and see, what's on your credit report. So you have that right, and that is available to you, so you can go and pull your report that way.
Okay. And if I, John Q. Citizen, if I pull my credit report, what things should I be looking for on my credit report?
Okay. So mainly when you get your credit report, the first things you're going to see is your personal information. So it's going to be your address, your birth date, any jobs you've ever had. That kind of stuff is going to be on your credit report. So you definitely want to look in there and you want to see, make sure those things are accurate. Make sure those addresses are yours. Make sure that birth date is right. Because a lot of times people look at their credit report and they might see a birth date that could be a family member. It could be someone they just totally don't know.
Right.
And then the thing about that is that's where you come into some kind of like identity theft. So you want to make sure you look for things like that, especially when you start going through the credit report. Just looking at your balances. Accounts that are supposed to be closed, make sure they're closed. If you have filed for bankruptcy, anything that you discharged throughout that bankruptcy should be showing a zero balance. So things like that, it's so many different components, but it's just things like that you need to be able to look at and just dissect your credit report and see, what's there. And those are the kind of things that we help out with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And once again, I have my John Q. Citizen hat on. And let's say I am looking at my credit report and I notice there are some things on there that are not inaccurate. Well, that are inaccurate, shall I say. So with that being the case, are there ways in which I can work towards getting those inaccurate items removed from my credit report?
Okay. So back to what I was saying. So you have a right to dispute those things with the credit bureaus.
Okay.
And so the credit bureau gets with the creditors and they have 30 days to report that, to show proof that that is you, to verify that account. Okay. If they cannot do that within those 30 days, then it has to be removed. So first what you have to do is dispute that information with the credit bureaus.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so previously when you were talking, you mentioned bankruptcy. Okay, and I know that bankruptcy is something that is afforded to citizens these days.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with a bankruptcy. However, can a bankruptcy affect your credit score?
Yes. Bankruptcies do affect your credit scores. We have talked to clients who think that if they file for bankruptcy, then it releases them of the debt and then their credit score is good, the credit report is good. Now, part of that is correct. It does release you of the debt. However, it's still going to report onto your credit report. Okay? And so, like for instance, Chapter 7 reports for up to 10 years, in chapter 13 or any other chapters, 7 years. So that information is still going to be in your credit report. It's going to show that you filed for bankruptcy. It'll show like if it's been discharged. It'll also show any accounts that were discharged in the bankruptcy. Just make sure they have a zero balance, but that information is still going to be on your credit report. And also with people filing for bankruptcy, what you have to understand is if you file for that bankruptcy, you need to go all the way through with it, if that's what you're going to do, because it's going to still report on your credit report. If you file for it and you decide you're going to pull out at some point, it's still going to report on your credit report as you file for bankruptcy.
Okay.
So you just want to make sure if that's a decision that you make with an attorney or you make a calculated decision to do that, because we do not give people legal advice, but you give it to your attorney or whatever, and you decide that's the best course of action, make sure that you're serious about it, because it will still report on your credit report. And if you have a high credit score, not high, but say you have a 650 versus a 500 when you file, if you have a 650, your score can drop close to 200 points. But if you have a 500 credit score, it might only drop 100 points.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because you're already a risk factor when you're at a 500. You know,
Right.
you have some risk factor at 600 or whatever, but not as bad as a 500. So you don't have as far to fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, fair enough. Okay. So now with all that being the case, you mentioned earlier that the credit repair process is a process,
Yes.
meaning it's not something that's going to be resolved overnight, but it will take some time.
Correct.
Given that fact, with your business, how do you work with your clientele with respect to moving through that process? Because I'm sure some type of financial cost is involved with the service. So how do you work with your clientele with respect to that?
Okay, so it just depends on what they actually need. For us to do the consultation is free, and we instruct them on getting their credit report, and we go through that information with them. If they decide to use our services, then what we do is we work up what's called a credit analysis. And so that credit analysis is done, and there's a fee associated with that depending on what they need. It starts around $149, but it could be less depending on if they were referred or whatever. We have different structures set up, and so after that, everything is billed in arrears because of CROA, the Credit Reporting Organization Act says that we cannot bill anything up front. And so it's billed in arrears, so $99 a month after that, until they decide to cancel the service, but there is no contract with our service, so until they are satisfied or is completely done or whatever, they can cancel at any time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know here in Baton Rouge in the marketplace there are various credit repair service providers, shall I say. What differentiates you guys from the competition?
Sure. Well, I'd like to answer that one. Just like when we first started, we talked about the principles that our company was founded on.
Yes.
And that was, I believe that's what sets us apart from the others.
Okay.
Because of our faith, because of the way we treat our clients fair, we make sure that reports are accurate. We have our integrity, because as my wife alluded to, the bond that we had to forfeit, we make sure that we're going to do things, with being ethical.
Correct.
And the truthfulness and the honesty that you get when you get us. Because when you hire Mustard Seed Services, you get us. So our name is on it. So we make sure we do things the right way.
Well, thank you very much, the Nelsons. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for having us.
And you too at home, I appreciate you for joining me. If you ever find that you are at your wit's end with an insurance company, get legal, give me a call. Credit is very important. If you have credit issues, call Mustard Seed. You have a good one.